Hello and welcome to another exciting chapter of the AI Ecosystem Podcast. Bob Moore here with Lindsey DeFalco. Today we are talking about hackathons, one of my favorite subjects of all time, relevant for decades now, maybe. I don't know when that word first appeared on the scene, certainly more than a decade, but kind of given new meaning and maybe a rebirth or a resurgence in the AI era. We've got one coming up here at Crossbeam. We're going to spend some time and talk about how we think about hackathons, how we've implemented our hackathon, and have a little discussion about like what should we actually be building in a hackathon inside of an established company in this era, in this moment in time.
I think it could get interesting too, because generally I love hackathons, but I also have some spicy takes about hackathons that are probably directly a result of how you view hackathons, Bob, and probably representatively how a lot of CEOs or leaders in companies view hackathons. So I know you also were a former engineer, as a maybe more recently former engineer, and the person
Well,
that runs.
recently reborn. I feel like I'm
You've
I was
outpaced me recently, for sure.
back on the wagon now, or off the wagon, depending on how you look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely claim it, probably a little bit more than I can at this moment. But yeah, I think we can get into some cool topics, because part of this from my perspective is always like, and I think this actually is even just more of a thing with people being able to do a bunch of vibe coding and stuff with like create more things quickly with AI, which has been a theme of what we talked about, is like, what's the difference between something you create in a hackathon or vibe coding or whatever versus production ready? And
Yeah,
like what's the
life is
process
just
there?
one big perpetual hackathon at this point.
Yeah,
Certainly
exactly.
for like the vibe coder set, which is really kind of puts a very interesting spin on this question of like, what should these things even be?
Yeah.
Would it be helpful? I can give like the speed round rundown on how we run these things. Which, to get your daily RJ Metrics reference out of the way, is exactly how we ran them at RJ Metrics, or at least this is how I like to run them. And then maybe you can layer your spicy takes on why that's a deeply flawed system as a follow up, if that sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, let me pull out my bingo card and mark off that center square for your
All
RJ
right,
metric,
great.
and then ready to go.
All right, ready to rock. So here's the idea with our hackathons: we shut down the company for a day and a half. One day is a full day that is dedicated, and this is a nice cure for time zone issues. Like, doesn't matter when you wake up, when you go to bed. It's kind of like from when you get up to when you are not up anymore on that day. You are working, and if you want to stay up all night, more power to you. And the next morning, we have presentations, and everybody basically gets a 5-minute slot. It's 3 minutes to present what you did, and then 2 minutes of kind of buffer time for Q&A from the audience and the next person setting up. We used to do these at RJ in person in an in-person office. At this point, at Crossbeam, it's a fully virtual experience. Even if people are in an office, they're presenting on a Zoom meeting. The core premise here is it's kind of a very pure free market system. Teams get formed however you want to form them. You can be a solo person, you can be half the company, doesn't matter. Ideas get sourced however you want to source them. There is usually some kind of very values level description of what good means. And typically it's something as vague as you should be building on something that makes the company better. So if you want to do something about internal company culture, you want to do something about hiring, you want to do something about our financial model, you want to build a new product, you want to improve our existing product, you want to communicate with customers better, all these things make our company better. If you want to go do some very random thing on another planet that you can't link to some downstream benefit to the company, that's when you start to get outside the box. We had one guy at RJ Metrics once he got tired of the Keurig, the K-cup machine in the kitchen, always being empty and him having to fill up the water. So he built a system that worked just like a toilet tank, like it had a little flapper ball in it. And when the level got too low, he did some plumbing work in the kitchen and actually hooked like a water supply he drilled into the K-cup reservoir. And that thing worked for like 3 years. It's just like the K-cup reservoir was always automatically refilling. He didn't even pledge, but shout out, I think that was Sean McAvaney. Shout out Sean McAvaney. But anyway, it benefited the company. So it totally qualified and is a little bit of a hardware hack, but it counted. So then after the presentations, we do ranked choice voting. So everybody gets a ballot, and you rank your top favorite projects, and make the list as long as you want. If you have a top 2, it's 2. If you have a top 10, it's 10. And if you know how ranked choice voting works, it's awesome. It kind of makes the consensus bet best results rather than just like looking at the project that got the most number ones. And I'll do an hour on ranked choice voting some other time if you go beyond that.
It's also
Um,
it's a dramatic reveal too. It's a fun
oh
way to
yeah,
watch.
it's really great. You watch like the burn down of like, yeah, did anybody get more than 50% in the first round? If not, we eliminate the bottom most vote getter and go to what all those people who voted for that bottommost one put as number 2 and redistribute the votes. And you gradually get to the point where someone has a majority. It's a fun process. And then prize wise, we are typically, my favorite version of the prize is what we call the Brewster's Millions prize. Brewster's Millions is a movie that's been made like 5 times throughout history. The most famous one has Richard Pryor in it. But the storyline is roughly that this guy inherits $100 million, but there's a clause in the will that he has to spend like $5 million in a weekend, or else he loses the whole thing. There's some convoluted reason why he has to do this. It's kind of a comedy of errors where it turns out to be really, really hard to spend $5 million without accidentally accruing assets or equity value or something else in a weekend. So the Brewster's Million Prize is we give you $500 and you have to spend it in a 24-hour period. Doesn't matter what you do, but it has to be gone in 24 hours. And back at RJ, we had some great ones. Buck, the co-founder of Crossbeam, one time got a tattoo with his Brewster's Millions winnings. We've had people go to the casino and put it all on black on the roulette wheel. They lost, by the way, which I guess it satisfied the requirement. I don't know what they would have done if they won. I guess it counts.
There was
And yeah,
there's
a lot of
another.
people will buy company swag, or they'll go out to like a really fancy dinner. Or they'll fly, if it was a team with people in different cities, they'll like fly someone to the other place so they can all like hang out. And but there's a lot of good stuff that's come out of that. So, but anyway, that's like the hackathon. Historically, pre-AI, that's the hackathon. And before we get into the AI stuff, Lindsey, I'd love to hear like how you would tweak it in an ideal world, or maybe how we have
Yeah.
tweaked it at various times.
Yeah. Well, first, a couple other fun prizes, because one of them makes me laugh a lot.
Yeah.
Well, the first one, which does not make me laugh, is me and Sean Belanda got the $100 cheesesteaks when we were in Philly.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's a great one.
They're
That's a
like,
great
I think they have like gold
one. At
foil on them.
Barclay Prime, right?
Yeah. Delicious. Loved it. And then another one which I loved is Nick McAvoy. Shout out Nick. He convinced his team to let him buy something that would like mill grain into flour to make bread, and then he delivered bread to his teammates on some regular cadence over some period of time. I'm not sure if it's still going, but if you guys are listening, you can let me know. That one was
incredible.
creative. Yeah, I think the I love hackathons. I think they were admittedly a lot more fun when everyone was in person, staying late, and you like ordered food, and people were up all night. Like that kind of old, more classic hackathon structure was really fun. But I still think they're great because it's a time to like put things down and maybe even just like churn through something that is that's generally not something you'd churn through. So like I think we had a winning hackathon project, you, me, and Mandy, in the very early days where we just created our help center.
Yeah. Oh, that was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a winner, actually, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And we just literally like made a help center and filled out all the content, created all the docs and all that. So the tension I always see with hackathons is generally the perception that they're production ready and the amount of time that it will actually take to get them to be production ready. So, and it's generally conflict between go to market and then the product design engineering side of the house.
Yeah.
And I think it's tough to solve for. And I think, that's if you end up in a culture where your engineering team hates hackathons, then you're probably doing that wrong. And there's probably some really big rift in the perception of something that's comes out from a hackathon being like ready to go to production at scale versus it actually being a hackathon. So I think from the early days, something we've done well is said that they're about learning, and that the point is to learn. But the reason I said I probably have a spicy take is that we also have a tendency to be like, okay, great, this can be done in this amount of time. And we used to do like an evaluation at the end of every hackathon of like, how long would it take to get this in production? And I think that starts to take away the fun because it feels like you're just doing your work faster.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if there's like a solve for it, but I think that's generally like the spicy thing. If there's ever tension around hackathons internally at companies, it's that. It's like, it's supposed to be fun, but then people get excited and want it to be real. So that's my
Yeah.
spiciness.
I like, here's the CEO persona that is infuriating to product leaders, which is like, but like, you kind of can do it faster, right? Like
You are the
there's a little
problem.
bit of like and I think there's a happy medium in this negotiation that exists, which is there is such a thing as like a proof of concept or a removal of the mental burden of all the reasons this is going to be hard that allows us to demonstrate why some things are worth doing the hard things to get to in terms of getting to the finish line. And like once seen and felt and understood as a prototype are sometimes elevated in the sense of importance associated with them or like the priority associated with them, and then B, there is this thinning of the knowledge transfer gaps that exist between like executives and product teams and engineers and designers that happen during a hackathon that collapse those down, that
Yeah.
I think actually do remove a lot of what makes these things slower, which is not the implementation details, but it's the surfacing of what the edge cases are, and it's the decision making around the pixel perfect designs, and it's the handoffs between these teams and the availability and meeting conflicts and all kinds of other stuff. Like if no one else is doing anything else across a very cross-functional set of people that would normally need to collaborate in a normal work environment, they just get shit done faster than they would have otherwise. So it's
Uh-huh.
really like sometimes the lesson in you can do this faster is not like work harder, code better, design faster. It's like make your organization flatter, like reduce the number of stupid meetings that people are going to, like increase the uh, level of autonomy at which people can operate or the amount of trust that exists between teams to like step into each other's territories a little bit when there's an appropriate amount of comfort. Like it's a little bit of like an organizational wake up call of like this stuff is taking too long, not because we're not working hard enough, but because we're not getting jobs done in as efficient a way as possible. Yeah, that's a way of like me like throwing a middle finger at myself instead of at like the
Yeah.
PDE teams, right? It's like you've built an organization where things could be getting done faster and they're just not because of a bunch of, silly bureaucratic reasons.
Well, I
And this
think
is a
that's
great way to use that.
and that's probably why you start companies, right? Like the early days, the the
Yeah.
building phases, being able to have an organization that's as flat as possible for as long as possible is it's fun, it's exciting. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of and again to bring this back to like how I think this is what AI is doing in a really big way in organizations is it's breaking down not only like let's say you have an engineer who's like, oh, I shouldn't propose a product idea. It's not my job. I don't want to step on, a product manager's toes. It's taking that away in the same way that hackathons take it away. And
Yeah.
I do agree. A lot of it's just, I think, a mental block where people are like, oh, well, it's not that's not what I do. I don't like come up with the ideas. I don't come up with the design. There's somebody else that does that. And also, I don't want to offend them.
Yeah.
And it kind of breaks all that down. And so that's actually what I'm most excited about with like what AI is doing to the collaboration within product design engineering in general is it's giving engineers tools to write product docs and make designs really easily. It's giving, designers ways to access code more easily and, same with product teams. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh,
So enter AI.
yeah.
So part of what's like, where do I even start, right? Like hackathons, there's this incredible appeal of like, hey, maybe we can build like 5 things in 48 hours. And your mind gets blown that you kind of get to, see something soup to nuts get created that at least looks like it kind of works, even if the back end is like total garbage and nobody's paying attention. But like, take away the word hackathons, and I think I just described like lovable,
Yeah.
or like so like a rapid prototyping tool where really you're just substituting engineers being available to work on everybody's crazy ideas for 48 hours for an endless supply of commodity labor that performs at the, X percentile of your typical engineer, and that percentile is climbing,
Um,
but like also available. So like this is one of the things that I'm excited and nervous and don't know what to expect about in this hackathon, which is, are we going to have 100? We normally have like 10 teams. We have 100 teams, and are they all going to build so much more than usually gets built that we're going to have like every presentation is going to run over, or will there be this self-consciousness about like that the limitation will be good ideas, not ability to execute on those ideas, and maybe we'll actually end up with fewer because everything that everybody ever wants to like hack on, they're just kind of doing in their day-to-day life, and we're kind of blessing that it's acceptable way to spend your time in the company in the last couple of months.
yeah,
Um,
I'm. I have no idea. Maybe it'll depend on whether or not they listen to this podcast before the hackathon too. How much pressure they feel around it. I think there's the other thing I'm wondering too is how much how much AI slop will come out of it. I say pessimistically,
you mean
so
like 98% slop or 99% slop? Is that what you're trying to decide
yeah,
between?
pretty much.
It's
'Cause
going to be a lot. Yeah.
yeah, it's funny because I've literally done hackathons and won our internal hackathons just on creating a workable front end of a new concept. And it's that was a killer hackathon, was show
Yeah.
something that looks functional. And that literally takes one sentence prompt,
Yeah.
and anyone can do it. And so it's it's yeah, it's both cool, and then also immediately is it okay, what's the next level?
Mhm.
Um, it's is it cool and also not cool that that's so easy to do now? 'Cause so many hackathon projects that took the full 24, 48 hours, I think will take 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. The hackathons used to be the old slop factory. And this
Yeah.
is actually like maybe something we should have spent more time on in the original hackathon description, which is like you mentioned those meetings we used to have about what it would take to bring these things to reality. And like
Yeah.
the conclusion of those meetings is kind of self-evident, which is usually out of the dozen projects that got completed, one or two of them would end up actually making it out into production. And now those one or two might be incredibly impactful. Like,
Uh-huh.
if my memory serves correctly, Stitch, which was a spin-out business of RJ Metrics that ended up being very successful, was a hackathon project, like started as a hackathon project. Like major parts of our product functionality, quote unquote, started as hackathon projects. Not to say that the ideas are always invented during the hackathon, but like the hackathon is the first opportunity to show the potential of something, and it can
Uh-huh.
end up getting kind of big and exciting, and that's great. But the other 90% plus of the stuff that comes out of a hackathon, people put their blood, sweat, and tears into it for 2 days, and then we never look at it again.
Yep.
Maybe it changes our thinking a little bit, but that code never reaches production. And even if we like the feature, we rebuild it from scratch. Um, and that is fine, and it's like an accepted parameter of these things. But it is funny that that is the non-hackathon norm today. Is like we're all creating slop all the time, basically.
Most of even our, we do weekly reviews with the PMs each lead a weekly review for their team. And, they're bringing prototypes, of all different levels to the reviews now. And those historically for a PM to create it would be a hackathon. To create a full design, you either need to know how to front end code and go do it yourself, or you need to know how to use Figma at a decently high level. And so it is, yeah, my expectations of what people are going to generate are pretty high, I think, in terms of what the potential is.
Yeah,
Um,
my biggest worry is that they're gonna have bad ideas. Like I really do. Like I think there's gonna be great work done, and the potential to build amazing things is gonna be very strong. And yeah, maybe my biggest fear is that people are just gonna work on the wrong stuff. But the wrong stuff to me is not necessarily the wrong stuff in general.
Mhm.
And maybe that's kind of the point of like how democratized these things are. So I don't put my finger on that scale. I think I wait to learn
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
all right. So we have this internal channel where people can like drop ideas.
yeah.
Um, what what is interesting to you like thematically, and do you think there's been a difference in the ideas this time around versus previous times?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm gonna pull this channel up and maybe like read some of them out because I think it will, um, for folks that are following along here, these are like really good representative examples of this, right? So like a lot of this stuff, I'd say one theme here is we've adopted Claude internally as kind of our AI chatbot and authority and integration hub and everything else at the company. So there's been a big movement toward people creating skills and projects and also creating either direct MCP connections or data integrations through N8N to give Claude access to certain classes of data. So there's a suggestion here about giving Claude access to feature flag data. So, our end users and customer success can understand what customers have what feature flags turned on without needing to log into like our secure admin panel area. This is really cool because it's like potentially a security hardening thing because it reduces this frequency and even maybe need for access to this more sensitive code area just to get at like a narrow slice of data um, that sometimes might actually be easier to retrieve alongside other things and getting like a client report. So it's kind of a cool idea, but it does require data making it from like our production data sets out into Claude, which is something that is currently not kind of a blessed behavior. So there's almost like we need to create some kind of separated air gap layer for these non-sensitive slices of the production data that Claude's then able to see. So that's just an interesting, like very specific, but also maybe not that specific thing that if this is true, what else is true, right? You can give Claude access to all kinds of other stuff. Um,
Hmm.
uh, hop in if you got any comments on any of
Yeah.
these. Um,
I
uh,
think I
uh,
noticed there's like a theme of either replace this tool that we use for something internal or build a fully functioning tool for something that we do internally.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I'm trying to think like, because I feel like that was kind of a theme in the past. Like a lot of people look internally for, like what can they do operationally to make their jobs easier or people around them's jobs easier. But I'm actually like really optimistic about us actually being able to do this for a bunch of
Yeah,
these.
crazy.
And this is, I think we keep talking about this, and this is like the big topic in the market right now is how AI has changed the build versus buy
Mm.
conversation. And so, I think I'm gonna be really interesting to see like if these actually end up being functional at the end of a hackathon.
I love that. There's one area where I think, interestingly, hackathons tend to create more durable things is actually on like operations and go-to-market related projects. So you use the example of that help center that you, Mandy, and I stood up 8 years ago, which I
Hmm.
think is like the bones of our current help center still have like relics of the work done in that particular thing, which is crazy. Um, like some of these things are really long lasting. One of our team members here proposed creating kind of a control center and like data aggregation hub for our AEO efforts, which is technically answer engine optimization, although like
I didn't know
it's
that.
really tempting to just call it AI engine optimization, or
Yep.
it's basically making ChatGPT recommend your product, is kind of what it boils down to. But in our, this is so funny. Yesterday, I had actually four completely separate meetings where AEO was the topic. We should probably just do a whole podcast episode on this because it's bonkers. But like I in the morning I met with Sean Blanda, who ran content marketing for us for years and is this like brilliant kind of content thought leadership guy. And it was a theme that like all of his clients are now asking for AEO stuff and like how can we create content that makes us stand apart, not to the humans that want to consume our stuff alone, but also like to the agents that might decide to recommend our stuff. And then I went over to the Franklin Institute, which is a science museum in Philly, where I do some volunteer work, and we were talking to them about their marketing website and like all of the like classic SEO style strategies that could very easily be employed that might then increase the chance that ChatGPT recommends the Franklin Institute as a place to go on the weekend with your kids, that has a parking garage, and like how to make sure that that's incredibly visible to the robots that are scraping their site. And then I talked to Jake, my old business partner, who runs a company called Common Paper, and we were talking about like, the contracts that they create there. Common Paper is like a legal tech startup that works in the realm of like standardized contracts and contracts as APIs, and like those are really powerful content assets that might be kind of fascinating as like an AEO strategy to get Common Paper on the radar of folks that are setting up a new tool that they're building in a Lovable or in a code automation platform to like have the contracts just built in. Always have your terms of use page, always have your privacy policy, and it's always Common Papers. Like, why isn't Claude Code just inserting Common Paper with every single project that ever stands up? And then I had a call internally here about our own AEO efforts, which is what's being posted in this hackathon thing. It's such a hot topic, and no one knows what they're talking about. And the old SEO firms are making serious bank because they're just calling what they do AEO because it's not true. Like a lot of SEO has always just been cleaning up your crappy front end code so that it's very interpretable and discoverable and like consistently uses the right tags and attributes on objects, and your servers are resolving down and forwarding to consistent URL paths and stuff like that. And then there's obviously like inbound links, and like inbound links are kind of the same as inbound references. It's like get other people to say things about you and point to your website that kind of deliver the message you want. And like that classic strategy works in AEO too. But all the crazy growth hacks and everything, there's this whole other vintage of startups that have started to build kind of what this hackathon project is proposing, which is like, I'm going to give you a dashboard where you can see how you're doing. And the way we tell how you're doing is that we run 500 different ChatGPT accounts, some of them free, some of them paid, all on different Docker instances, accessing it from different browsers with different perceived geographies. And we ask the same exact question and we see what ChatGPT gives back. And we look for the incidence rate of your solution being mentioned in those answers, which is like cool idea, but very not necessarily super defensible. Most people probably don't want to go through that headache. And I think there are some really nifty businesses being built, but I know of at least a few startups that have those crazy rip-roaring AI era ARR growth curves doing stuff like that because companies have budget to spend on AEO. And because nobody knows what they're doing, it's very easy to convince them to give you their money based on whatever story you want to tell. So I don't know. The importance of that area is enormous. The ability of anyone to execute on it well, I think, is questionable beyond just doing common sense stuff, which I suspect does work over the long term, just like it did for SEO. But anyway, great hackathon project. I think it's a great question of like, it could potentially be very broad, but I think in this case, the idea being suggested is just to create some baseline monitoring and dashboarding and kind of attempting to attribute outcomes to these various projects we have going on for AEO.
Yeah. I wonder what the new like first page analogy is going to be for AI. Maybe just that it's returned it all.
Yeah, that's
First-
probably a great point. I like somebody. This is where there's definitely businesses to be built, and they sound like they'd be really fun to build for the first 6 months, and then like absolute hell for the next 10 years. Which is like you could probably, if you're really good at like brand and you're really good at category creation, like design an answer to that question that the whole world decides is the right one and decides to adopt, and then like build the product that is the one that happens to know how to measure that and give some kind of
Yep.
score and like become like the standard. And that's all great until like Anthropic decides that they don't like your standard and does something intentional in their like harness around core Claude to make it make absolutely no sense anymore, or be impossible to have that be the way in which you optimize and measure results. So like
Yeah.
it's not like classic SEO, right? It's like you're always trying to kind of like chasing this ghost.
Yeah. You're at the mercy of what all the
Yeah,
models decide to do, which I guess similarly, I guess you were always at the mercy of, Google, but it
totally.
felt
Yeah,
a bit more static than the current landscape.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I do. I was talking to ChatGPT about bags. I really like bags. I have kind of a problem, like, sling bags, backpacks, whatever. And every time it would give me a recommendation or give me an opinion on the recommendation, at the end of the message, it would then be like, do you want me to tell you about a super secret bag that's really popular in this niche community and nobody knows about it except them? And then I'd be like, yeah, why didn't you tell me that in your initial message? If that good. And then it would return like the same list of 5 bags that I was looking for before. And I was like, I don't know what this is. And I don't know if this is, at one point I asked it if it was giving me an advertisement for something because it was like really pushing.
Yeah.
Uh, and it said no, but you know, do we trust it?
Yeah, this is like ChatGPT is so fascinating because they are like, even though it's not giving you an ad, I think they are like soft testing
Yeah.
where to insert ads and like how to like best, likely drive ad conversions in the moments like. So I wonder if like, while strictly true, it's not an ad, you got put into some kind of like A/B testing loop around like, hey, this
Yeah.
person seems like someone I might be able to push an ad to in a future state. Uh, what happens if I position it like this versus
hmm
something else?
Yeah. It's funny from like an AEO perspective in this more like, generative AI world where like, would you rather be in that first response or would you rather be the teaser where they're like, this is better than anything I told you before and just say yes and I'll tell you what it is, where it's all, hyped up. It's like
Yeah,
psychologically, am I going to be like, oh, hell yeah. And now I'm more into this one than I am in the, first 4 results that you gave me.
yeah,
Uh, so it's funny because it's also not like, one to one with, oh, I can visibly see this thing on the first page of Google, or I have
yeah,
to click next page.
yeah.
I mean, there's different ways you can manipulate it
It's
and
all
get.
yeah. It goes from being it's kind of like a good metaphor for the whole AI era because it goes from being this
Mhm.
extremely deterministic, consistent thing to
Yep.
probabilistic.
Yep.
So like that metric can no longer be that I'm number one on the first page always. It can just be that like I've gone from 21% of the time to 27% of the time I end up
Yeah.
getting included.
Yeah. Because you
Um,
could be. I mean, let's say you measure. Okay, you're actually in the initial response. From whatever LLM. Then, okay, great. But what if they're like, hey, here's a really lame option.
mhm,
Okay, not great that you're in that first response. And then it's like, tell me if you want cool options.
mhm,
And then that's the second, it is funny because it's like you have to be context aware more so than just
yeah.
the context being the number of page that you're on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't envy all the SEO firms or internal SEO people who are going to get like the DM from the CEO at 2 a.m. like, I just asked ChatGPT who's the best, and they gave an answer that's not us.
Yeah.
Uh, because they're in the 1% of times that ChatGPT gives that answer. Yeah, being at the mercy of like every single search is somewhat a roulette wheel, especially when it's subjective answers is it's gonna be
Yeah.
tricky. Ads are gonna make that trickier too. But
Oh
hey,
yeah.
I see one in here that I love because the craziest case study that's blowing my mind. So remember, we talked about hackathons used to be like the original slop factory, and they're like the lowest bar of like getting something live and seeming like it's working. You put in here, this is a suggestion of yours, which is to build rep to rep mapping,
Mhm.
potentially not the account mapping matrix, right? Which would be like in Crossbeam, it's like, here's how many customers I have in common with this partner. But what a lot of people want is I am sales rep Bob at Crossbeam, and I want to see how many customers that I own I have in common with Lindsey over at Trendkite. And we want to collaborate just on our books of business and where they overlap. You can do that in Crossbeam, but you have to build a report and you have to filter down by the 2 reps. Wouldn't it be cool to just have like a giant matrix of like all the reps versus all the reps, and you can just drill right in like we do with the different deal stages? Um, there's a comment, you posted this as an idea, and then RA said, hey, Lindsey, I thought you already vibe coded that. And you did, right? So like you have like a UI that seemingly works in our UI that has that exact matrix. And now you said, yeah, but it was all demo data and pure front end. But like all demo data and pure front end is how you just described the way to win a hackathon.
Yeah,
So like
exactly.
now we're in this mode where like on a whim, just to like prove a point during the normal workday, you can spend an hour and whip up something that would have won a hackathon in the past. And the hackathon is actually becoming the place where you implement like the first version of the potentially production ready thing, because in a full day, that's what you can do. So like, this is a crazy sign. It may be the perfect sign of the evolution of what this thing is becoming. And maybe changes the standards around what you think about what a successful hackathon project looks like. Like, are you bringing a new mind-bending idea to bear, or are you making something that feels like it should take longer, literally actually be done and production ready in that time period?
Yeah, it's like maybe maybe next, no, maybe later this year if we do another one, it's the end of the hackathon, you're launching the feature, if it's a feature, or like you're launching
Yeah,
the thing, and
yeah, shipathon.
that's the threshold. Yeah, it is funny because I created that, I like vibe coded that to demo at a stand up that we had gotten the product team access to Claude Code. That probably would have won me a hackathon like 2 years ago. And
Yeah,
now I'm like,
I bet I would have. Yeah.
yeah, now I'm like, it's slop. It's crap. It's using fully fake data. I forced it to do a lot of things in a way that I know is bad. And yeah, it would be great to like clean it up. And I do, I have a tendency, all my hackathon ideas are like build this feature, but in 2 days. So everything I said I hated about hackathons, I also uh, am a part of. But I actually think it's possible now in a more realistic way than it probably was before.
Really true. Whew. All right, cool. Well, any ideas on that list that jumped out to you, or like any other stone unturned here?
I think that's like pretty much it there. I think it's like what I thought was cool. So there's a lot of stuff from the engineering team and ops, which is like pretty standard, I think. Engineering team, ops, and product. The thing I want to see more of that, I think AI makes possible is a ton more from go-to-market. Because now we are in a position where like go-to-market teams can fully create working things from an ops standpoint internally in a hackathon time period really easily. And I
Mm.
think that's also usually historically the go-to-market teams feel left out of hackathons because they can't do anything. They can't, like, I don't mean that they're not capable. I mean, generally, if you think of a hackathon ideas, it's like you need somebody from ops or you need someone from engineering. And so it feels like you don't have as much that you can actually do yourself. Ooh, a good example. It's not a hackathon idea because she just did it,
Yeah.
but Mandy, who is our other CPO, so Chief People Officer, we had this tool that we use that basically introduced people to have coffee every week. And we're paying for this. Sorry, I hope this product isn't listening. And she went and recreated the workflow in 8N. And so
Oh, yeah, yeah,
she
yeah.
just, I think it took her like less than a hackathon amount of time, went in, and now it's our own workflow that's like introducing two people to set up a coffee chat every week. And that's like a fantastic example of somebody not on the product side of the house at all, who literally set up an NAM workflow and used Claude to replace this app that for us is, not worth paying for.
I think like, I don't know what we're paying for that app that we're not using anymore, but I bet it was on the order of like $5 a month. And like, there's one lens you could look through, which is like, okay, we have a
Tired.
C-level executive at the company, spending a day, or I don't know, maybe it was an hour, but basically replacing this thing. Uh, what's the point at which you actually get real returns? But I
Hmm.
think we're in this moment where I don't know or necessarily care if Mandy builds another N8N powered like internal application that gets used by the company herself personally.
Hmm.
Again, what I do deeply care about is that every single person on our leadership team has a core end-to-end understanding of like the mechanics of how this stuff comes to life, like, and what the life cycle of from idea to implementation to deployment out to the company to the maintenance of it, if any is necessary over time, like looks like. Because I think that allows for this like diffusion of responsibility assignment and expectation setting and all kinds of other things to every single other person on the team, who's potentially able to, make everybody's lives better or make their jobs easier or whatever else by using this stuff. So I do think it is really important that everybody's got at least one of those things. And it is very cool in our business. Like Amy's work, Amy, our general counsel, has built so much really, really neat stuff in terms of like cap table models and, financial forecasting models. And they're doing some stuff right now on like the way that prorated contracts work. And like it can get really complicated with revenue recognition and kind of legal language around that stuff. And like a big engine that can kind of reconcile all that and generate the legal language automatically for contracts. It's pretty sweet, and it's all being done in an AI enabled way, and that's exactly what I want, right? It's like it
Mhm.
is this weird thing where our senior most executives are like tinkering around in this stuff, but they're not building slop, at least in all cases, right? There are some things that look like they're going to really persist, which is super cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. I think that's probably the biggest opportunity with hackathons now that we're in the AI era is the fact that everyone at the company can contribute. Like, I don't think I've ever seen Kelly post a hackathon idea. And so here we have, what's her official title?
let's call her head of corporate culture or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She
she's among
she
other
runs
things my
everything.
EA, but also orchestrates all our internal company events and does a bunch of runs our stand up meetings and our all hands and
The like critical piece of keeping Crossbeam running and
yeah,
happy.
a real glue person. Yeah.
Yeah, and, not technical by nature, and she dropped an idea in here about, helping her with budgeting for events in terms of flights
Oh
and
yeah.
hotels. And, yeah, there's a bunch of apps that do that, and they're all, varying costs and qualities, of course, but that to me is so cool because 'cause I'm like, I wanna see more people that are not on product design
Yeah.
engineering side of the house in here being like, "Oh, I can actually build stuff, and I can build stuff that's valuable."
Yeah, one thing I hope to see a little bit of, and I think this is probably where I'm gonna end up focusing, and it's a little bit of a like a throwaway project, but I think can open a lot of doors, which is just looking at bleeding edge tooling and applications of like the core LLM models. And a good example of that is my project about a year ago was all related to video generation. It was like the very first thing that I ever did with AI video was like those crossbeam commercial, fake commercials. That was about a year ago. And it kind of sent me down this crazy video rabbit hole. But how far all that's come in the last year, I suspect that whether it's video or not, or kind of media related or not, there are probably just absolutely wild ideas and tools and technologies that have come to light that none of us even have the attention span to be aware of. And I think I'm going to do a little bit of research and digging and like look at the current batch of Y Combinator companies and just like go through the stuff that only 100 people have tried out yet and
Well,
pick one or two of them and see if there's something like pretty profound that can come out of it. Um, to try to understand a little better like what's coming next
yeah,
versus what a redundant idea.
nice. Yeah, I'm curious how you do that because I have done something similar for like you've got your standard product problems that people are always trying to solve, like feedback collection and analysis and product documentation and, ticketing and all of that. Um, and I always pop my head up and see if there's new tools that have solved stuff in a really interesting way. And for some of them, I found them, and for other ones, I haven't. But I struggle with finding like the super early AI tools in companies. Um, and like, where do you do that, Bob? Are you in like special groups? What's like your path if the
Yeah.
other people are like wanting to see
It
what's
is a
up?
lot of like surrounding myself with humans who are very experimental and intellectually curious and accepting upfront that 90% of the time they don't know what they're talking about or they're spending their time on something that won't be that useful to me. And then still caring enough to like pay attention to that last 10% and like indexing it against like and by the way, I'm also wrong 90% of the time. So that leaves 1% behind that's like actually really interesting stuff. But that is like sometimes it is like user groups or email lists that all the CEOs of a given venture capital portfolio are on, or it's like I'm on a text thread of like founders who have exited companies that live in the East Coast that are just like talking about the craziest shit all the time. Um, or it is a little bit of there's a lot of people that have worked for companies that I've founded in the past that I've just stayed close with, that they themselves have either started new businesses. So, like, I'm an active angel investor. So, doing that gets me in front of a bunch of people that are trying to build out new stuff and then forces me to get at least like mildly smart on a bunch of different areas. Um, and again, be wrong a lot,
Hmm.
but kind of stay in the realm of where people are experimenting. I think that's really it. It's like staying close to the bone of experimentation, I think is really the theme.
Yeah. It's funny because everything, most of the things you just said are like you have access to groups that most people don't have access to, because you're in the founder community and have these like direct ties to VCs. And I I've found like because you mentioned you're just going to go look at the most recent group of Y Combinators. Like, for
Yeah.
us folks that don't have your level of celebritydom, what do you think the most accessible way to find out, like, what all the new tools that are coming out of the AI world are?
I actually think like go to Hacker News and go to like Show HN, like filter by
Mm.
Show HN. They often do. I don't know how early on like the members of a YC batch actually get announced and disclosed, but like the batches happen so large and so often now that even if it's not the current one, you want to go look at the most recent one, you can definitely see like all of the companies and find roundups on them. And if you know one person who has ever gone through YC, they have this thing called Bookface, I think it is. It's basically like Facebook for all the YC founders. So everyone who's ever been through YC has like a private social network thing they can get onto. And I think you can look at all the companies that have
Oh,
been through
nice.
and all the people that have been through and all that stuff. So like if you
Yeah.
can just like network your way to one YC alum, it might be really interesting to just like sit with them in like a guided session and kind of go through like what's cooking lately and what the
Yeah.
discussions are about and are like. I think it's a lot of this kind of human to human network based stuff combined with leveraging technology in some way. I'll tell you what I would not do. I would not ask ChatGPT. And I would not, because like they're, first of all, they're trained on data that's out of date. And then second of all, they're not that great at distinguishing fluff from non fluff when they go and search the internet. And that's probably also part of why it thought these 5 bags that you could buy at Target were like this best kept secret of the industry. So ironically, the last person I would ask about what's going on in AI is AI.
Yeah. Yeah. I ask, and maybe this can be like a future topic, but like finding information in this age, I think we touched on this a little bit a while ago, but like how quickly things change. I've been hearing more and more that people are like, oh, I'm in this WhatsApp group or I'm in this like Discord. And it literally is just people who are either building it or involved in some way. But it is funny because you can't like go to Google and search like product feedback AI tool.
Oh
uh,
yeah,
and
Oh my god, we should spend an episode on like what a wasteland Google is. If you can even make it past the sponsored results, which I challenge anyone to do these days.
yep.
Like what comes after it and why that's what comes after it when it comes to like a bleeding edge research, like
Hmm.
information discovery standpoint. It's just I'm a big believer in like the dark internet theory. Like it's all there's the incentives to create content for humans on the internet are rapidly approaching zero, and most of the novel knowledge and information is being created in these like walled garden closed access networks. And whether that's a social network that millions of people can join or whether that's a WhatsApp thread that you're either on it or you're not, the internet itself as we know it, like what Google can see, is it's like the coral reefs, right? It's like it's
Yeah.
basically where it's a skeletal system of its former thriving self that's just going to sit there forever, and people are going to go, uh, they're going to go scuba diving around it, and that's going to be the extent of the interaction.
Yeah, I had this interaction with Google the other day where I searched for something and then it wasn't what I wanted, and so I like followed up and I realized that I was trying to like talk to it.
Oh yeah, try to talk to Google. Yeah, yeah. Right.
And it
To Google's credit, the one thing it is doing kind of well is like the insertion of like the Gemini answers at the top of the
that's what
search
I tried
results
to talk to.
sometimes. Yeah, and then you can kind of go, yeah, you like go back and talk to it, and it like kind of works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard for them to jam ads into that. They must
Cool.
not love it too much.
Sweet.
Cool. Well,
Feel
anyway, I do plan on winning the hackathon. I forgot to mention that. If you
y-
hadn't heard, that should have been my description up front. Is that like uh, anybody can win. And I do talk a huge amount of trash every single hackathon about how I'm going to win. And I think I've won once, maybe. But
Wait,
it
we
is
actually
good. Somebody's got to care deeply.
we have a running joke. We call it sabotage because Bob also
Oh
likes to
yeah.
pick hackathon projects. Like one time he reset our entire company domain in Google from get crossbeam to crossbeam, and it broke everyone's logins into every tool that they were using in their hackathon.
Talk about this is like the startup stuff that I love. We were like 10 people at the time. We had been getcrossbeam.com for a year, and I
Yeah.
finally negotiated the acquisition of crossbeam.com as a domain. And I looked around the room and I was like, we can spend a year like painlessly, softly migrating ourselves and living in like this dual confusing world, or I can just break everything, and whatever needs to be fixed is going to get fixed pretty damn fast. And then anything that doesn't need to be fixed, we didn't need in the first place. So yeah, I just like switched it over, and a lot of stuff broke. A lot of stuff broke. But fortunately, we had no customers yet at the time, so it was mostly like self-inflicted or self-experienced pain.
Yeah, because
But
everyone's
yeah, definitely
hackathons were
screw over
ruined.
everybody else's hackathon. That's
Yeah.
you're welcome.
I don't even know if he won that one, so
I
was it
should
worth
have won, but I think out of spite, I think I got very few votes out of pure spite in that cycle. There's a bridge too far.
Oh. All
Yeah.
right.
All right. Well, we'll catch you next time. We'll report back on the hackathon and what we learned, what won, and more to come.
Bye.